Okay, I'm going to just go through my user research portfolio and speak in depth with the work I've done. So here on the first the page, I'm going to have a video resume, which you can play and you can hear the same thing that I'm discussing basically, but in video format. It's a YouTube video. It's a bit laggy right now.
Being a science-based product.
But yeah, here as a general overview, this is my experience. I have 2 years of experience. I'm a full stack mixed method researcher, so using both qualitative methods like surveys, information architecture, usability tests, and quantitative methods like experimenting with A/B testing, which I haven't had actually a lot of opportunity to do, and I want to do more. Obviously, depending on what the company needs, but yeah. So the first project I was working on was for a Russian art marketplace, and really the big problem that that they had was that people weren't really signing up, and even though it was a useful thing, a useful product that didn't exist on the market, they were surprised that people just weren't signing up still. And so I was brought on to see why people weren't signing up, and we did a variety of tests. Like in the startups, like I came from a startup background, in the startup space that I've been working with, like it's very, very scrappy. It's very, very intuitive, and there's not too much research design that is that we stick through from beginning to end. So when new information and new insights are fed in, we pivot pretty quickly. And so the process of working with these startups tends to be a very messy process of interviews and then conversation with the product team, and then back to usability tests, and more conversation with the product team, and then maybe another set of interviews, and then maybe a mass survey. So it's not the research design isn't particularly methodical, and that's something that I want to. And that's the reason why I want to join a larger company, so that I have a research director to report to, and we might be more methodical in our practice. A lot of we can go through the case studies, and that way you can evaluate my thinking and understand why I would use a tool at each point in the research process. But for me to tell you exactly what happened sequentially would be very difficult, because we did everything at the same time. We changed things a lot. So anyway, yeah, a lot of information is already here, and I ended up discovering that users dropped off because they weren't able to navigate the site easily and see the types of works that they were most interested in. There were default artworks that were at the top, and we found that the default artworks were not artworks that appealed to the majority of people. And art being a very as we found, it was a very particular and not particular, a very niche. Our purchases were very niche purchases, meaning if you want to buy, let's say anyone would want an iPhone, for example, but not many people would want a photo of an oil painting of a horse, right? That's very particular, and so it was important that our during the initial onboarding, we showed people the variety of art pieces, which wasn't shown at the time, and so people dropped off. It was a full case study. I wrote up in Google Docs and link here. So the second company I worked with was called Brain FM, and Brain FM is like a neurotech app. It's basically music that's scientifically designed to improve focus and relaxation. So it's some offices, of major banks use it, some hospitals use it, and the big problem that we found along with the growth manager was that people were dropping off, like doing onboarding, like really quickly. Same thing as Rammka. Actually, I worked on a lot of onboarding processes. People were dropping off, and we didn't know why. They were dropping off at a very large percentage, and we didn't know why. And compared to other apps, and we didn't know why. And so we performed a variety of tests. We performed tests on people that stayed on after 5 uses, and people that completely dropped off after the first use, people who dropped off even just after downloading the app, and people who dropped off after using it 2 times. And we had conversations to see what was happening underneath the hood. And this piece was a piece that allowed me to be a little bit more methodical in my research design. So, like for example, understanding where to dedicate resources to, which user cohorts to dedicate resources to more of, and which tools to apply to them. So just a particular example that I remember, in the user cohort of people who didn't sign on at all, it was important that we offered incentives, because that's the group of people that like is the least susceptible to the use of the product, right? And so the surveys that we put out were really high level mass surveys with incentives, to ask people like, hey, like, what was your intention going into using this app, and how come this intention wasn't met? Obviously, it was a bit more in depth than that. We also had to keep it fairly short, because we knew that this user group would be less engaged than other user groups. So we sent out more, and we also sent out more emails to this user group, because we knew, like, out of like 100 people, maybe like 2 people would reply, right? Being a cohort that wasn't as engaged, like the cohort that would drop off after the first user before even using the app. And so yeah, like this project allowed me to be more methodical with like how to allocate resources and time and whatnot, because there was like clear segmentation, and I got the opportunity to work with the growth team and work with a lot of their data, their app data, the amplitude. And so yeah, same tools, the same tools that were used in Rammka I used here. Nothing new and special. Had the opportunity to do a bit more contextual work, to see like how exactly people were using the app, the users that did pay and remain on the app for a long time. And yeah, and we basically found out at the end, this is an outcome that people didn't really know how to use the app properly. Like you can't, for example, you can't put the sounds on speaker. You have to use headphones, and you would have to work like you're normally working. So there were particular things there that we discussed with the scientists, their head of science there, that had to be done by the user in order for them to achieve the full effect of the product, and people weren't doing them all the time. So the next product change was to help people do that. So that was Brain FM. And the last project I've worked on is a community contributor / user researcher role with the company called Maslo.ai. And the work that I did there, and I'm currently doing as well, is building out like a co-design research process. So imagine like a research process where people are more involved in the design process, and it's not just like here's a survey, here's a $25 gift card, like answer questions. It's more of like, okay, you're using the app, let's get together and work together, and I'd love to hear more about, you know, like how you're using it. And it's much more casual. So to be more particular, actually, like how we went about it. I started offering like free therapy because Maslo.ai itself is like a empathetic research startup. So they make companion apps. They're called companion apps, apps that act as like a companion to a user, like a very like emotional being and companion that can listen to you and understand how you're feeling. Um, and they take that and they sell it to different companies, which then apply their technology in the company. So they sell like an underlying layer of technology, basically, and because of that, they can't really access the users directly because they're selling it to third party companies actually interface with the public. So what I did in order to create this co-design process and to get feedback was to offer free therapy through one of their apps, which is like a mental health and coaching app. And that created the space for people to volunteer up advice and help co-design if they wanted to, right? I'm still in progress with this. It's a very slow process, I found. It's not as quick as like going out with a bunch of surveys and asking people, hey, can you help with this? What's your advice on this? And here are some particular questions. No, it's a very slow and gradual process of working directly with users and providing value to their life outside of the value that your product provides to their life directly, right? And through that, there's a space for them to volunteer up feedback or their time or input, but they don't have to. And so it's a very slow process. I'm learning about it. I don't really have much. There's not really much guideline out there on how to conduct good co-design. So this has been a lot of running around in the dark. And this is my resume and my WhatsApp contact QR code. So that is all.